So I was actually on a road. I went to my niece's wedding just outside of Pensacola in the second weekend of March. And we had already been hearing about what was going on in China. There was already the debate about this virus and all this stuff was going on. So I'm down there for this wedding, and it was, I had no idea it would be the last one I would be able to attend for quite a while, much less perform in as a musician. And so that was the second weekend of March. And on the drive home was my first experience in one of those nonsense COVID-related, it's the science kind of deals. I walk into one of those big Love's truck stops on the highway coming home, and I had my personal mug, you know, my personal coffee mug. And I walk in to use my personal mug, and one of the staff members there at the Love's truck stop said, sorry, you can't bring that in here. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the rules, we don't know all the rules yet, right? This is all being developed on the fly as we go. So the next thing that I did is I went back out to the car and I put my mug in, and then I came in and I went up to the coffee urns, and there's no cups anywhere. So where do you get a cup? They said, oh, you have to go prepay and you have to get a cup from behind the cash register. Okay, so I went up there and I prepaid for my cup, and they handed me the cup, and then I went, so she touches my cup, and she touches my money, and she touches the change that she hands back to me. And this is back when they thought, remember the videos, they showed you how we were going to transfer everything by touch?
Everything was surface.
Right, everything was surface oriented at that time. And so okay, all right, so I went over and I touched the coffee thing that everybody else has touched, the little lever, and I filled up my cup of coffee, and then for whatever reason, they didn't put the coffee lids over there, so I had to go pull the lids off again. You have to peel them apart where everybody else has touched. So I had to peel the lids apart, put that back on there. And so I got my coffee. Now you fast forward many months later, and now I'm moving my daughter to Florida. She lives in Tampa now, just as of August. So we're moving her down there. And I'm pulling a trailer, and she's riding with her mom in another vehicle. So we're not pacing each other, but I pulled over at another truck stop, and I grabbed my personal mug. And this is in August. So I walk into the truck stop with my personal mug, and I walk in, and this guy with the Love's vest on, sir, you can't bring that in there. Well, between March and August, I've done the math. And I stopped, and because he was very loud and very boisterous, and everybody in the entire thing was full of people right on I-95, and everybody turns around and look at me with my mug in there. So I just stopped, and I said, this is my mug. This is an item that no one else will touch. I'm going to go into the restroom. I'm going to rinse it out from the previous coffee that was in it. And I'm going to clean it out, and then I'm going to walk over, and I'm not going to touch anybody else's cups. I'm not going to fumble around with anybody else's lids. And then I'm going to put coffee in this mug, and nobody else will touch it. And I won't touch anything else that anybody else will touch. And I said, that's the science. And that's exactly what I did, because I was done. I don't know how many of you reached done yet, but I'm done. So, what happened going back to March again is I got home, and we saw this horrible thing that was happening in Italy at the time. And it was scary, it was frightening, and it should have frightened all of us. And obviously they were locked down, people weren't allowed to leave their house at all, so you can see the videos of them all on their balconies singing Italian songs to each other and trying to keep their national spirit up. It was very touching, very moving. And then one day I read this long article that quoted the Italian chief epidemiologist. And he said, first of all, I'm just going to cover two of the things that he said in this long article. He said the first thing is, he said the average age of the person dying is 85 years old. So my antenna went, straight up at that moment. Because if he had said 45, we had a problem. Second thing he said was, oh, and yeah, he said, almost without exception, of those in that age group that are dying from this, they were already going to be dead this year by some other pre-existing condition anyway. The other intended, straight up. The calculator came out, I started dissecting it, and using 5th grade long division in mid-March, I came up myself, as I said, to do everything by the numbers, and I came up with an average survivability rate across all age groups, somewhere in the 99.8 to 99.5% response. Within a month of that, UCLA, Stanford, University of Stockholm, using much more sophisticated math than what I had access to, and computers I'm sure, they were coming up with almost identical numbers to that. Fast forward a couple more months, then the CDC buries in all of their statistical data that ubiquitous 99.74% across all age groups survivability rate. And that's if you get it. Because as we know, for whatever reason, our immune systems, for some of us, just don't get virus. We don't get it, and we just don't know if we fight it off. It's a thing. It's a done deal. It's just what happens. And not being a doctor, I don't care to get into those types of discussions, because for me, I'm not looking at what they're looking at. I'm looking at what happens afterwards once the data comes out and then we do the math. So as I'm watching all of this, and as I'm becoming obsessed with this math over the course of the months, because I'm a musician as my full-time career, I've been made, as they say in England, I've been made redundant. And as they said here, under the COVID description, I've been made non-essential. And so for the last 9 months, I've been painfully unemployed, as they say. And that's what happened. At the same time that all that's going on, then we know what happened with the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. And when I saw the video, I was probably exactly like 100% of the people in this room. I wanted to kick that cop in the face. You know, I wanted to take him out myself. Give me a shot. Nothing that happened, whether what he did was illegal, justified, murder, accidental, just unfeeling and uncaring, whatever you want to describe the action or the activity or the incident that happened. And I have much more deep feelings about that now that we've been able to see everything. But obviously the aftermath, our country did not deserve, and it was unjustified in every way, shape, or form. So that brings us to today. We've had an interesting year, and now we're capping it off with this whole election thing. And so now we have this contested election. And sure enough, the contested election comes back and affects me again. So first of all, the first thing that happens is the governor of my state and the surrounding states completely made it illegal for me to earn a living. So let's just start there. And if you're like me, and you've been basically self-employed for 40 years, even when I've had contract jobs, we've worked together before, those were 1099 jobs. I've been self-employed. The last W-2 wage earner job I had was here in Shreveport, Louisiana, at the Shreveport Times when I was a senior in high school. I have not filled out a W-2 form since then. Isn't that amazing? So I spent my entire adult life as a self-employed person. You know what happened in the first round of all of the assistance money and the unemployment money? You know, unemployed people, self-employed people like me that haven't paid into the unemployment insurance fund for 40 years, you know how much we got? Nothing. Then they came out with the gig economy, thing, which I was allowed to apply for. And I went in and I looked at it and I went, oh, heck no way. I'm not doing this. Because the other thing, knock on wood, is that in 40 years of being self-employed, I've also never been audited. And there was no way I was filling out those forms to apply for that. Wasn't going to happen. Then, on top of not being allowed to work, then they went down and in Raleigh, North Carolina, I think y'all know, it really surprised me here in Shreveport. You fared a little bit better than we did in Raleigh. Y'all didn't have the big riots, did you? Yeah, they destroyed downtown Raleigh. I mean, every pane of glass, beautiful downtown, vibrant city. And some of you may or may not be aware of this. One of the big music magazines 2 years ago did a story that said the top 10 music cities in America, not counting Nashville. So if you take, Nashville is, okay, they don't get to count because they are what they are. Top 10 music cities in America, Austin and Raleigh were second. Wow. And so I lived and worked in, for the last 27 years, this vibrant music community, and they've not only taken it away from us by virtue of this pandemic, but then they came down and burned out half of our rooms downtown. So those are gone. And then we fast forward to the election, and in the lead up to that election, I brought on a partner for this particular political thing that had been a hobby for so many years for me. And everybody's always going, you should monetize this, blah, blah, blah. You need to start doing podcasts. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I always thought that was great. It was fine. But I was fine. I didn't need to monetize it and didn't necessarily even want to. But about May of this year, I decided, okay, probably should be looking for another source of income at this point. So I've had a lot of people wanting me to do this. So let's try it. So we put an initial round of funding together, and we bought all the gear. We spent a lot of money, put in an incredible blog site, and launched into this thing. Got into the election, and I hit that wall with the Libertarian name, or as we've already talked about, I decided to make a change. And we took a bump down initially because a lot of my Libertarian comrades decided that they were, mad at me for doing what I did and abandoning the label. So we took an initial hit, but then it started growing again, and we recovered well past that. And the election rolls around, and little did we know at the time, the New York Times did a story on this just last week. They did an incredible exposition on what Facebook itself had been planning in advance of the election. And the fact that the New York Times wrote the story blew me away. I couldn't believe that they actually admitted it. But they covered it that Zuckerberg, 9 months before the election, commissioned his programmers to build what he called a kill switch. So that if we got into a contested election, they could shut down the voices that would most likely be in opposition to whatever the narrative was related to the election. Now, in 10.5 years, I have never received so much as a warning from Facebook. A couple of weird things happened, like for instance, back in January, some of you may recall, there was a huge gun rally in Richmond, Virginia. And I attended that and when I posted an event page on my page on like the third, so the gun rally was on a Monday, so like Wednesday or Thursday before, I posted an event page to try to get some, patriots to go up to Richmond with me. And all of a sudden my page went dead for 5 days. And when I say dead, it's still there, you can still see it. I couldn't even post. I went after their support, over and over and over. Every channel, they have so many different channels that you can get through the support. I couldn't get through. Nobody would answer. No response. Anything. It just went dead. And then Tuesday morning after the gun rally, all of a sudden my page worked. So that was a little weird. Wow. But as the New York Times reported last week, Zuckerberg initiated this protocol that if we got into a contested election, that there would be a kill switch so that they could silence those voices. And not silence them so much as ban the pages or deplatform them. But they, for me personally, I can say exactly what they did. For the first time in 10.5 years, I went boom, boom, boom. 3 strikes, 3 fake news warnings. I have appealed, I've protested, I've showed them, I've taken screenshots of what their fact checkers accused me of doing. The fact checkers are completely, totally wrong. I mean, the fact checkers just flat out lied. But they put me in a position where they not only throttled our reach, and that term throttled, but they also deactivated my ad account. What does that mean? Well, it means I can't even buy my access to my own followers on the page. So the first thing that they did, as I told you before, if with 16,000 followers in 2016, I could reach as many as, 600,000, 1.5 million people with a single viral, column. By the time we reached this election cycle, that average was in the 15,000 to 25,000 range, unless I bought ads and opened it up to more readership, which is okay, As of yesterday, last night, I put an update of this particular tour that I'm on, and just before this meeting started, I checked to see what my reach was. It was 70 people. Out of 37,000 followers, 35,000 followers.
Can I
70